Okay, we want to look at the string type. And the string type we will see here is a collection of characters. Notice when we're assigning a string type, we're going to use double quotes. For characters, we use single quotes. And the size matters, right? You can kind of think of double quotes contains a collection of characters. It is a class library inside of Java, just like Scanner and just like the math classes. But this creates a whole object, which is a reference type. We can use a reference type for a variable, and then they come with a whole bunch of methods that we're going to use. Right now, we can treat it like a variable, like we have been doing with the scanner object, and then we get those special methods like .next that help us use some routines built into the class. And so what we're going to do is look at some things that string objects do and what can be stored in a string. Underneath the hood, a string is a very special type of memory construction called an array. An array is a collection of memory that stores the same type of variable, multiple instances of it. So inside of the memory, this stores 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 characters are stored into the Welcome to Java message. They're stored together in memory, and the way arrays access those, you can access any position in the memory to get the parts of the string. And when you try to access the entirety of that array, it processes it back out. So strings are arrays of characters, and arrays are collections of common similar memory objects. Now, with the class, we have some things that we can get from strings. We can get the length. We can get the character at a particular index. We can get a new substring based off of a pattern. We can switch the whole thing to uppercase. We can switch the whole thing to lowercase. And we can trim, removing white space characters on the sides. And if you notice, that's some of the things that our scanner object is doing for us. So let's go to our sandbox, and we're going to play with these commands: length, character at index, concatenation, or putting two strings together. Sorry, not searching for, but putting two strings together, and two uppercase, two lowercase, and trim. And so what we're going to do in Eclipse here, I'll go back to my sandbox, this place I used to play, and I'm not going to use a scanner object for right now, so I'll remove this. And what we're going to do is we're going to create two strings. So string 1 and message 1 equals, and we have welcome to Java with an exclamation point as our first string. And string 2 will be message 2. Programming can be fun. Can be, right? We have to find fun when we're learning things. We have to find fun ways to use them. So we have two strings with two different messages in them. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to use the length method. So if I browse back, we're going to use the length to find out how many number of characters are in a string. And then we're going to go use the character at a particular index. And then we're going to concat or put the two strings together. We're going to make it all uppercase or all lowercase, and we'll trim some white space. So again, we're going to use all these, but let's first look at what length does. So system.out.printf. I will start switching to using printfs, and I'll say %string has %d characters. And so let's look at message 1. Now we're going to give message 1 dot length. And let me put a return here so this all fits on the screen. So I'm using the length function to tell how many characters are in message 1. And let's run this. Welcome to Java has 16 characters. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. So we have the ability to count the number of characters. Let's look at let's use again a printf. So I'm going to put a space to hold a string object as the character in position 1. And so we'll look at what is in position 1 of this string. So I'm going to give it, let's use message 2. Message 2. And then we're going to look at the character. Let me again come down here. Right, so message 2 is going to go into the string token. And then in message 2 dot character at, and I'm going to use the number 1 because I said position 1, and we'll position 1. So I have a printf statement. These tokens are holding spaces for variables. This is asking for a string, and this is asking for a string. I'm going to put message 2, and then I'm going to put what's in position 1, or the character at 1. And so if we run this, I didn't put new lines in. So this is a nice thing about sandboxing code, is it helps you see some common mistakes. Printf doesn't naturally create a new line, so I'm going to put the control character /n to make a new line. And we'll run this. Well, notice this says programming can be fun. It has R in position 1, but it should have a P. And the thing to note about arrays and strings is they start counting at character 0. And notice 0 is the first position. And this has to do with the way that the computer internally calculates what's going on in memory. So when we're talking about arrays, the first element is at 0. Sometimes people will use variables and subtract 1. We'll find different ways of working with this. As we loop our way through things, we'll also see that it's very native in comparisons to loops to start at 0 and work your way up to the length. So there's a lot of ways where the mathematics of this makes sense, and we'll build those structures. And let's look at the other. So we've got length, character at. Let's concact the two strings together. Let's put the two strings together, and then we'll play with 2 uppercase and 2 lowercase. So I'll make a new string. String combined equals message 1 dot concat message 2. And then I'll print out this combined. Again, I'm going to start using printfs more often. Right now, I'm just going to put this all combined. So, whoops, that should be an S for a string. So I have a placeholder for a string, and combined is going to go into it. Combined uses message 1 concatenated with message 2. And notice it put the 2 strings together. No extra spacing. I didn't have spaces in my string. And so this puts the characters from the 2 strings into one bigger string that has everything in it. And I think since combined is a string, we'll use 2 lowercase. In my output now. So we'll add a 2 lowercase here. And it switches all the letters to lowercase, to uppercase. It switches all the letters to uppercase. And now we want to look at trim. So I'm going to make a new string, input text, and let's just say your user inputted space. This is a bunch of text and some spaces on the end. And I'm going to use trim on this. Again, I think I'll use a printf. Just start introducing the printf. I'll hold a place for the string there. We're going to give it input text dot trim. And so trim will trim this text. Let's see what it does to the white space or the blank spaces. Oh, again, I have to make sure I get my /n's in here. And my /n's in here, because printf does not give you a new line natively. This is a bunch of text. Notice it got rid of the space in the front, and if I drag down here, got rid of the ending space. And so if you have a bunch of spaces you need to get rid of, trim will get rid of the white space on either side of the text. And white space is anything that isn't a displayable character, but can be tabs or any other blank spacing. So that's what these methods do on strings. They work on processing the strings, and they process them character by character. Now, strings are objects in Java, and the methods work on a particular string instance. And so these are called instant methods. A static method is what we see with the math classes. They're not tied to a specific object. And when we have been calling methods that are in an instant, and we've been doing this with Scanner, we use the reference variable, dot the method name, and if it takes any arguments. And arguments are particular variables that we have to give to our instant methods. So we've been slowly introducing the syntax as something we have to do, but now we're going to break it down because it's going to become more flexible for us. So they're using a print line to show the message length, just like we did in the textbook. I prefer the printf as controls formatting, and we're going to be doing more and more with printf. So this chapter, so I'm introducing it now. You can read section 4.6 to get a better understanding of printf. And then if we get characters from a string, this idea of the array starting at 0, this is how a string is stored into memory. And so if we want a particular character, we reference its position offset by 1 because it starts counting at 0. And we can convert from lowercase to uppercase, which we showed in our playing in the sandbox. And string concatenation takes string 1 and adds to the end of it string 2. This can be done with the plus sign. We've been doing string concatenation inside our print statements with the plus sign. It concatenates strings. The concat instance method is useful. I find if you're going to be creating messages that get used often, this is the better way to do it. You get your final output this way with concatenation. But if you're combining things on the screen, the plus sign concatenation in the print statement is also very useful. And so both symbologies do the same thing. And depending on if you're going to store the output to use at a later time or you're just processing the output immediately, depends on your choice of which operator method you use. Now, we can read strings from the console. I did an example video of this, and we're going to look at it here. So I'm going to go and modify what I have in the sandbox to get input from the scanner. What scanner does is when we do input.next, it grabs everything up until the return key was hit. And so we can have next spaces on white space, next line, next ln, next line does everything spaced off of the enter. So if you want to enter a phrase or a sentence, you'd use next line. If you want to have everything separated by spaces, you use next, and scanner will look for the first blank space and turn it into different strings. So what we're going to do is we're going to convert what we just did in our sandbox to taking user input. So I'm going to come back here and we're going to create 3 strings. Well, first, I guess if I want user input, I need to make sure I have the scanner object. And we'll create 3 strings and 1 scanner object. So we'll get rid of all of this. So there's our 3 strings, and then we'll make our scanner object. I have to come up with a new word other than input. Again, we're tying it to the text stream that's coming from the keyboard. So what we'll do is we'll ask the user, enter 3 words separated by spaces. And we'll do message 1 equals input.next. Message 2 equals input.next. Message 3 equals input.next. And we'll print out, again, I'll use a printf. Input 1 is %s, new line, input 2 is %s, new line, and input 3 is %s, new line. What I've done is I've combined multiple lines into one printf, and I've hit enter so that it's easier for us to read. So input 1 is, and it's going to print out what the first input was. It's going to print out the second, or we'll say word 1, word 2, word 3. And now I need to feed it the variables to go into these placeholders. So the first placeholder gets message 1, the second placeholder gets message 2, and the third placeholder gets message 3. Now I used return here to separate this string so that it would fit on the screen. And Java automatically closed out the string and used the concatenation operator for this to work, which this is fine. This saves me having to type system.out printf for each line that I want to do. And let's close my scanner object. So I'll close my scanner object. So let's see if I made any typos or anything. Enter 3 words separated by spaces. Programming, computers, tired. And there, the individual inputs were put into individual strings. If we look at our options we have available here, if I look at input.next, you'll see I have an option for line. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to comment out message 2 and 3. And I'm going to change this just to show what happens when I change my object. So the input is. So what I've done here now is I'm using next line. This will grab everything up until the return key and put it into message 1. Let's run this. Programming, computers, tired. Notice all 3 words, everything up until I hit the return key is returned, and I have a full string. So next we'll use the white space to separate individual substrings out of whatever the user inputted. Next line takes everything the user has inputted. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to stop the video here and do another video for string comparison, which is how we can compare strings themselves.